Imagine being trapped on a floating prison 300 miles above the planet with the most dangerous predator in the entire galaxy. They're perfectly adapted hunting machines with no other goal than to destroy every living thing they can find, and when you can't run, hide, or even fight, your only hope of survival is getting off this station before it's too late. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the xenomorph invasion in Alien Romulus. Somewhere deep in space, a Weyland-Yutani probe comes across the wreckage of the Nostromo, where Ripley first encountered the xenomorph 20 years before. Picking up a large cocoon, it travels back to a space station where a team of researchers decide to open it up. But that was their biggest mistake. 5 months later, Orphan Rain visits the colony office with her android brother, Andy. She's a farmer here at the Jackson Star mining colony, and she's finally earned enough time to buy her freedom. But when she tries to get permission to leave, they end up extending her contract for another 5 years. Later that night, she gets a call from her ex-boyfriend, Tyler. While working on his hauler ship, they detected an abandoned space station floating right above the colony. They're all orphans as well, so instead of waiting for the company to kill them next, they want to fly up there, take the station's cryopods, and use them to make the 9-year trip to Yavaga, where they can actually see the sun. Their only catch is that they need Andy, the android, to help them get inside. Their sketchy-ass ship barely makes it through the atmosphere, but after finally rising above the clouds, Rain gets to see the sun for the first time in her life. Off in the distance, they spot the massive Renaissance space station, and the pilot Navarro hooks them up to the dock. But there's nothing that could prepare them for what's about to happen next. Okay, I get where these kids are coming from, but they need to be careful here before they end up walking straight into a death trap. They're overlooking the fact that they found this place because of a distress beacon, and the only time you send one of those is when you're in distress. Something really bad must have happened there for the company to abandon an entire station, and now they have no way of knowing if the pods are even still intact. There's no guarantee that they're in good enough condition for intergalactic travel, so they're putting themselves in a lot of risk just to find out if they're too damaged in the first place. And if they're not damaged, that's even a bigger red flag. Those pods are definitely worth more to the company than their lives. And if they won't even let a few workers leave the planet, why would they leave such valuable equipment just floating around in space, waiting to be destroyed? The only logical reason is that there's something going on with the station that even they don't want to touch, so I'd think twice before going in there, even if it is their one and only shot off this planet. Now right now, their plan is for Tyler, Bjorn, and Andy to go inside, while Rain, Kay, and Navarro hang back on the ship. Since the station has been abandoned for so long, they have to expect critical systems like power, life support, and gravity control to be all offline. This is going to make it extremely dangerous to navigate through the station, and while they're inside, they'll have to rely on their equipment to keep them alive, meaning that if anything goes wrong, they could die just from a lack of oxygen. The structure itself is probably usable, and with only 36 hours before the whole station crashes into the planet's rings, they don't want to end up getting trapped inside. That's not to mention that there could be automated defense systems or even the leftovers from whatever dangerous stuff they were researching, so if you ask me, the plan could use a little work. Also, 36 hours is not the longest amount of time, but it gives them enough time that they don't have to rush. Instead of going in as a group, I would send Andy in by himself to scout out the area first. As a droid, he's much better equipped to handle situations like low light, low gravity, and no oxygen, and also much easier to retrieve and repair if he gets injured. They should send Andy in first, so he can check out how dangerous it is and let them know if the pods are even salvageable in the first place. Then while he's inside, he can turn on whatever life support systems he's able to get back online, making it much safer for his friends to follow him inside. Before going in, I'd also pack some emergency air supplies in case we got stuck, and use navigation beacons to mark the path so that it'll be easy to find our way back. The boys head to the airlock while the girls stay back on the ship, bringing a thermal scanner to help them find the cryopods. Eventually, they come to a point where the tunnel opens up into a larger room, and Tyler throws a light inside to help them see. They're stuck in zero gravity until they get the power back on, but as they're floating around the room, they hear the sound of a large machine powering up. To their surprise, it's the gravity generator, and it still needs to purge itself every few minutes to stop the entire station from exploding. Suddenly, Bjorn crashes to the floor as the gravity momentarily comes back, but luckily, he lands without getting injured, and they're all able to bring the computers back online using Andy's company access codes. This turns the gravity back on for good and powers up the cryopods that they'll need for the trip. But there's a problem. The pods don't have enough fuel. Tyler isn't ready to give up yet, and he uses the thermal scanner to find another cold spot on a nearby part of the ship. Ejecting the escape pod, he tells Navarro to pick it up while they go for the cryofuel instead. By lining it up just right, they're able to delicately catch the escape pod in the cargo bay of the hauler. Kay here starts feeling nauseous, and while her friends are taking care of her, they find out that she's pregnant with Bjorn's baby, making it even more important that she survives this trip. Down one of the hallways, a motion-activated voiceover explains that the station is split into two halves, Romulus and Remus. Noticing that they're creeped out, Andy tries to lighten the mood with some dad jokes, but that's when Bjorn snaps on him. He's salty because an android left his mom to die during an explosion in the mines, and tells Andy that the system that they're traveling to doesn't even allow synthetic humans, something that Rain knew but did not have the heart to tell Andy. They only need him to pilot the ship, but once they reach Yavaga, he's going to be decommissioned. This means it's a one-way trip, but his only directive is to do what's best for Rain. So Andy promises to stick by her side no matter what. Following the signal, the boys arrive at a lab that seems to be the source of the cold, but that's when they notice something strange. The expensive equipment and machines are all still there, making it look like this station was abandoned more than intentionally retired. Bjorn picks up a shock baton, but while he's bullying Andy with it, the android actually saves him from falling down a massive hole that's melted straight through the floor. All the way at the back of a flooded chamber, Tyler finds the cryocells with more than enough fuel to make the trip. He needs Bjorn's help getting it out, but he winds up freezing his hands with a blast of cold air, and removing it activates an alarm that locks down the room. Andy tries to get them out, but he doesn't have the clearance to open the door, meaning that they'll have to find another way. Realizing that they're in trouble, Rain and Navarro follow them to the lab, leaving Kay alone on the ship. The girl spots what's left of an android lying on the floor and realizes that she can use its module to upgrade Andy's clearance. But the droid attacks when she reaches for the chip, forcing the pilot to help her keep it down. Meanwhile, inside the room, Andy notices dozens of egg sacs stored along the back wall, and the temperature is steadily rising now that they removed the coolant. But these aren't just any egg sacs, they're face huggers. And while Andy takes several minutes to reboot, a bunch of these little abominations start dropping into the water at their feet. Okay, and this right here is exactly why I said there must be a reason why this place was abandoned. Now they're about to come face to face with one of the most disturbing extraterrestrials ever to exist, the xenomorph facehugger, and they'll be lucky to make it out of this alive. These facehuggers are the second stage in the xenomorph life cycle, like a 2 to 4 foot long crab scorpion-like thing with claw-like legs and a long tail used for latching onto a host. Their only goal is to hug your face and implant an embryo down your throat, keeping you alive until the embryo is secure and then dying off as you become the parent to something much worse. Just like the big ones, they're extremely strong and have acidic blood, making it almost impossible to injure or remove them without harming the host. The boys are trapped in here with about 24 of these things, and no way out until Andy reboots, but they can still save themselves if they act quickly. If it's not too late, the first thing they should do is put the cryocell back where they found it. This means they won't make it to Yavaga, but it also means that no more facehuggers will get loose, and it's better than ending up as a xeno parent. I can promise you that. Otherwise, they're going to have to hold out until Andy can get the doors open. Luckily, Bjorn grabbed a shock baton, and it turned out to be a pretty effective weapon, because he can use it without exposing drinking their acidic blood. The facehuggers are coming at them in the water, so what they need to do is group up and jump on top of some workstations. By getting to a raised surface, they'll give themselves a better vantage point where they can keep their legs and, most importantly, their faces out of the aliens' reach. Watch for the ripples that they make in the water and use the baton to fight them off if they leap out at you. Sticking the baton into the water itself might kill a whole group of them at once, but it also might fry Andy during a reboot, so I'd save that idea for a last resort. Another option could be to open the cryo cell in short bursts and use it to freeze them as they attack. For added protection, I'd put on their oxygen masks. This won't stop the facehuggers, but it's better to have at least some barrier than nothing at all, and will also help keep water out of their faces if they're caught in a struggle. In the meantime, Rain should go back to the lab, look for weapons or a tool to get the door open manually or anything else that might be useful, while Navarro starts running back to the ship, because they'll still need to make a quick exit if they manage to survive. Before the others can even realize what's happening, one of the facehuggers slithers up to Bjorn and wraps around his ankle, causing him to crash down into the water. Another one leaps onto his head as he struggles to get to his feet, but he's able to fling it away with his shock baton. This one goes after Tyler, and it almost manages to latch onto his mouth when his friend comes over and gives it an electric shock. But this ends up stunning Tyler too, who falls down paralyzed into the water. He wakes up just as one of the aliens is jumping down towards his head, but Andy finally reboots just in time, catching the creature by the tail and flinging it into the wall. Rushing for the door, they're able to get it open and escape the room, but an army of facehuggers is still right on their ass. Andy seals the doorway, but one manages to get through, jumping onto Navarro's face and firmly latching onto her neck. They can't get it off without trying to choke her, and Andy quickly points out that it's actually keeping her alive. Confused, the others notice that Andy is speaking in a different voice, and it seems like his clearance wasn't the only thing that recently got an upgrade. Still, he doesn't have any knowledge of what the creature is or if they can save Navarro, but he has an idea for how they can figure it out. Taking the injured android off the floor, they hook him up to a power source and bring him back online. This is Rook, the station's former science officer, and according to Rook, the only ones that they can save now are themselves. He explains that the alien has planted a seed inside of their pilot, and it's only a matter of time before something even more dangerous grows out of her body. Looking up, they see the creature responsible for destroying the station, the body of a dead adult xenomorph. This is what came from the cocoon that they found in the wreckage of the Nostromo, and it went on a rampage that killed almost everyone on board. When they finally took it down, its acidic blood burned a hole straight through the entire station, until Rook here finally sealed it up. Thinking it over, Rain suggests that they try freezing the creature to pull it off Navarro's face. The plan works as they throw the facehugger down the hole in the floor, but those eggs are already in there deep, and Rook doesn't sugarcoat the fact that the odds of her survival are not looking good. Grabbing Andy's hand, he explains that he can't let their human emotions put the whole group at risk. He's willing to do whatever it takes to keep the others safe. But when Bjorn realizes what he's up to, he quickly knocks Andy out with the shock baton, taking the pilot as they run for the ship. The instant that Rain reboots him, Andy takes off after them with lightning-fast android speed, forcing the airlock doors to open with a cold, emotionless look in his eyes, but he's too late, and Bjorn manages to lock him out just in time. Their only choice is to undock the ship, leaving Rain, Tyler, and Andy back on the station. Within minutes, Navarro collapses to the floor, and as the alien starts to force its way out of her chest, she accidentally kicks the controls, sending the ship spiraling uncontrollably around the station. All of a sudden, the chest bursts out of Navarro's chest as the ship slams into a fuel tank on the side of the station, causing a massive explosion that sends everyone flying into the wall. Bjorn rushes up to help, arriving just in time to see the baby xenomorph emerge from his friend's body. That makes one down with 6 more to go. Lucky for the group, the ship manages to crash directly into an open hangar, and Bjorn falls back down the ladder, knocking himself unconscious. The collision breaks through into a pressurized part of the ship, causing the hangar doors to automatically shut. Now they're all trapped on board with the aliens, and that's not even the worst part, because the explosion actually knocked the station off course. And now they only have 47 minutes before it crashes into the planet's rings. Okay, holy shit. I don't think I've ever seen a plan go so horribly wrong so incredibly fast. The crazy part here is that no one's really even to blame. Instead, we have all 6 of you idiots working together to create a massive catastrophe. And all I can say is now that you guys all f***ed up. We can admit that this plan was doomed from the start, right? Not only were you talking about stealing extremely valuable equipment from the most powerful company in the galaxy, but you let yourself into an abandoned station without giving a single thought as to why it was abandoned. I mean, don't you think there's a reason why they left in such a hurry? But you were all so focused on getting the cryo fuel that you didn't even stop to think about what else you might find. So you walk into the obvious dangerous experiment lab and find a mangled android with a hole burned all the way through the floor, and your genuine reaction is to think, well, that's no big deal, probably just a workplace accident. Like what, they just left it there and carried on with their lives? This is screaming, we have a problem, but you didn't even bother to look around before you touched some shit you shouldn't have and unleashed the most horrifying parasite known to man. You'd think you'd smarten up after Navarro got planted with an alien egg. Rook tried to warn you all exactly what was up, and you saw what that thing was going to become when it grew out of her. So just do the whole galaxy a favor and let Andy put her out of her misery. But nope, dumbass Bjorn over here had to get all emotional and leave half the group to die on the station just to save a girl who was already as good as dead. And now look how that turned out for him. What do you know, the thing that everyone warned you was gonna happen, happened. Only it went even worse than anyone could have possibly imagined. Making a mistake under pressure is one thing, but screwing up so bad that you almost single-handedly take out your escape vehicle, everyone in your group, and an entire space station all in one move is really something else. And somehow, that's not even the worst part, because that shit that just came out of Navarro is literally your worst nightmare. Congratulations, idiots! You just saved one of the most deadly creatures to ever exist. Now it's going to hunt you down for sport, and if it somehow makes it off this station, the entire galaxy is screwed. Luckily, there's still a chance to get out of there, but they'll have to be quick now that they threw off the station's rotation. And whether they live to tell about it or not, one thing's definitely for sure. Rain and her buddies, you all have seriously f***ed up. Their only choice is to head for the hangar and try to rescue the others, but the path ahead is blocked by dozens of facehuggers lurking around in the hallway. While they're figuring out what to do next, Andy goes back to chat with his fellow android, who tells him that his upgrade came with a new set of rules. Now his only directive is the same as Rook's, but it isn't clear exactly what that means just yet. Joining back with the others, Andy explains that the facehuggers are actually blind. Instead of vision, the creatures hunt using sound and thermal signatures, which gives Rain an idea. They're going to turn up the heat until the hallway is the same as their body temp, allowing them to quietly sneak through without the creatures noticing. Before going in, Andy warns them that factors like fear and sweat will give them away, so they need to remain as calm as possible. The 3 of them start sneaking through as quietly as they can, but Rain almost blows their cover when she gets freaked out by all the dead bodies, and Tyler has to calm her down before the facehuggers attack. Meanwhile, back on the ship, Kay wakes up and finds a strange cocoon already forming on the wall. Something grabs her from behind, but it's only Bjorn warning her to be quiet as they watch the egg sac start to open up. Plugging his shock baton into the generator, he boosts the power and jams it into the cocoon, but the acid blood melts right through. Suddenly, a tail whips out and slashes him in the eye, causing him to fall underneath the egg sac where the blood melts straight through his chest. Horrified, he watches as his fingers melt to the bone before the acid finally reaches his heart, making 2 down with 5 more to go. Kay rushes for the exit as the fully grown alien starts to emerge, but it's jammed, and when she tries to call her friends over the radio, the sound almost gives them away to the facehuggers on their side of the ship. Luckily, she's able to find the key just at the last minute, but she's so terrified that she accidentally trips and falls right out of the ship, knocking herself out as she crashes to the ground. The others can't stay calm after hearing that she's in trouble, and now the facehuggers can tell exactly where they are. Telling them to run, Andy leads the way as they sprint for the nearest exit, with a swarm of the creatures closing in right behind them. The android makes it to the door first, and he starts sealing it up without a moment's hesitation. But Tyler manages to slide through at the last possible second. Rain shouts at Andy for almost leaving them, but he insists that he had it all worked out, promising that he knew they would make it in time. Speaking of close calls, they only have half an hour left before the entire station is destroyed, so they have to keep moving if they're going to save their friends before it's too late. Over in the hangar, Kay wakes up and starts searching for a way out, but she can hear the alien stomping around somewhere close by. Crawling under a walkway, she stops in her tracks as the creature leaps down directly above her, forcing her to stay completely still. Instead of going after her, it takes the bodies of her two dead friends and drags them into the air vents. But she definitely isn't safe just yet. Waiting until it looks like the coast is clear, the girl climbs down and makes a break for the nearest exit. But trying to get it open ends up setting off an alarm. Her friends show up a second later, but just when Andy is about to open the door, he spots the xenomorph watching them from on top of the containers. Sensing that it's a trap, he steps back from the controls, calculating how long it would take to open and shut the door, and realizing that they simply just don't have the time. No matter how much they beg, he refuses to budge, and there's nothing that they can do but watch as the alien pierces their friend with its tail. Okay, now what just happened here is actually a great demonstration of the two different approaches to survival. Bjorn here was willing to risk it all to save one of his friends, but as you can see, that didn't work out too well for him. On the flip side of that, we have Andy, who had to make the unpopular call to let Kay become alien food. Honestly, I fully support that decision, and they would too if they had any idea about the kind of shit factory that they just stumbled into. They've just had their first encounter with a stage 4 xenomorph, and as you can probably tell by now, these guys are what happens when a facehugger's baby grows up. They're called the perfect organism by Rook here, and there's a reason why they're arguably the most terrifying species of all time. These insect-like monstrosities grow quickly to about 8 feet tall and over 300 pounds. That's like getting hunted down by Shaquille O'Neal if he got bitten by a radioactive spider. They're incredibly strong with an extremely durable exoskeleton that makes them borderline impervious to all forms of damage. Razor-sharp claws, and a second inner jaw, and a whip-like tail for spearing prey. They're also ridiculously fast and agile, but instead of brute force, they mostly rely on their strength and hunting skills, preferring to ambush their targets while lying in wait. Most of the time, you won't even see them coming, and honestly, that's probably good news. Just like the facehuggers, adult xenomorphs lack any eyes. Instead, they hunt by using sound and heat sensitivity, allowing them to detect prey in total darkness, and even through walls. It's a deadly skill for sure, but it also might be the key for how they can get off this station alive. All of their friends are dead, and everything they need is already on board the ship. The good news is that the alien problem is going to solve itself when the station crashes onto the rings. Now the only thing that they need to do is get to the hangar and get on their ship, but the obvious problem here is that they have a xenomorph blocking the way. Now, Xenos hunt by sound and heat, just like the little guys, and earlier we saw Tyler use a flare to lure the creatures away. For this idea to work, Tyler needs to give every flare he has to Andy, and he's going to run back to the cafe where they were attacked by the facehuggers. Once he gets there, he can use the kitchen equipment to light a fire. The noise and heat should work as a distraction, luring the Xeno away from the hauler so that Rain and Tyler can safely get on. Andy won't be in any danger of getting implanted, so he can casually make his way back to the ship after they're done. But we're about to see that the android has other plans. Furious, Rain slaps Andy across the face, disgusted that he would leave their friend to die. She wants to remove the upgrade module that's been making him act this way, but he refuses to let her do it, saying how his new directive is to do what's best for the company. He plans to finish the job that Rook gave him, and afterwards they can keep going to Yavaga while he goes back to the colony instead. The android leads them down to a state-of-the-art lab where the scientists had been experimenting with xenomorph DNA. Speaking through the computers, Rook explains that the company has a problem. While they're trying to conquer space, their human workers keep getting sick and dying. They needed a way to make people better, so they created a vaccine using the xenomorph DNA, giving humans the same regenerative powers as the aliens themselves. After grabbing some samples, Andy says that he needs to get them back to the colony, but just when he's about to open the door, Rain notices that the alien is waiting for them right on the other side. They need a new plan, so Andy opens up the armory and gives each of them a pulse rifle. Tyler works her through how to use the aiming assist, but that's when the android explains that these aren't for shooting. After all, they're on the bottom floor of the station, and if they shoot it, then the acid blood will get them all killed. The idea is to use the weapons as a bluff, making the creature think that they're a threat so that they at least might have a chance to escape. Instead of going back out the way they came, their only choice is to sneak out through the conveyor belt, leading them onto a large service tunnel. Andy mentions a lift at the other end that should take them back to the ship, but the area is filled with more egg sacs. And the worst part is that they're all empty. Hitting the lights, they're horrified to discover that the creatures have transformed the entire tunnel into a nest. Going that way looks like certain death, so they decide to find another way, but just as they're about to leave, that's when they hear a familiar voice calling for help. It's Kay, and Tyler immediately takes off running down the tunnel towards the sound of her voice. They end up finding her gooped up to the wall, but Andy can tell that she hasn't been implanted yet because, unlike the other bodies, there's no dead facehugger nearby. His only idea to keep Kay alive is to try injecting her with Rook's secret formula, but Rain stops them at the last second. Not knowing what the chemicals will do, she thinks that it's safer to get their friend to a cryopod, but that's when they hear something big and slimy headed their way. Picking her up, the four of them rush to the elevator, but as he's opening the door, Tyler notices one of the xenomorphs closing in. There's no time to warn them, and all he can do is dive into the creature's path, taking the hit to save his friends. Just then, the alien pierces through his shoulder with his tail, knocking Andy off of his feet as it pulls him up into the nest, before brutally finishing him off with a little mouth chomp straight to the eye, making 3 down with 4 more to go. With no time to waste, as dozens more of the Xenos close in, this forces Rain to leave an injured Andy behind as they scramble aboard the elevator. Once they're a safe distance away, she realizes that they have to go back for Andy, telling Kay to head for the ship as she uses the ladder to go back down. The only problem is, as soon as she's gone, Kay here gets the bright idea to inject herself with the alien DNA shot, and that's about to be her biggest mistake. Reaching the bottom, Rain carefully enters the tunnel and makes her way over to Andy. She has to reboot him, but while she's doing it, she takes the upgraded chip out of his upgrade port, returning his personality back to normal. They aren't safe yet though, because if the Xenos weren't bad enough, now they only have 10 minutes before the station hits the rings and everything goes boom. Okay, Rain just made a critical mistake by leaving her friend alone with the samples. Rook made it clear that his only directive is to make sure that the Xeno DNA reaches the colony, and by sending Kay off on her own, she got rid of the only bargaining chip that they would have had. Splitting up is almost never a good idea. It seems like the smarter choice would have been to get Kay to safety first, and then come back for Andy if she had the time. Now they need to get back to the ship before the whole station is destroyed, and the only way to do that is by using the elevator. But we don't have time to wait because a horde of Xenos are already closing in. The aliens have beat us in every way when it comes to a fight. They're stronger, faster, and sneakier, and even if you shoot them, their blood will just melt right through the floor and get you killed anyway. If they can't get to the elevator, then their only choice is to run back to the lab, but that doesn't mean that they're out of options. First, they can use the equipment there to quickly build themselves weapons that don't draw blood. Then, Andy should use his abilities to turn the heat in the entire station up to body temperature, allowing their thermal signatures to blend in, before finally starting a fire here in the lab. The source of heat should distract the Xenos while they quickly sneak back to the elevator and get to their ship before they get turned into space dust. Just then, a swarm of aliens starts coming towards them, but bluffing them with the pulse rifle works. at least for now. Running for their lives, they make it back down to the conveyor belt, only to learn that Rook has the doors locked down. Now that the samples are headed for the colony, these two have outlived their usefulness, and he won't do anything to save them because it might put his mission at risk. Furious, Rain pops off a few shots into the CRT, but it looks like there's no way they're getting out of this, and there's only a matter of seconds left before the aliens realize that they're defenseless. Meanwhile, back in the hangar, Kay finally makes it back to the ship. Speaking through the monitors, Rook starts trying to convince the girl that her friends are already dead, telling her to hit the autopilot button and save herself. The others are about to accept that it's all over, but that's when a dad joke gives Rain a last-minute idea. Rushing to the controls, she quickly turns off the gravity generator, causing the tunnel to go 0G. While Andy helps her keep steady, she starts absolutely unloading into the swarm of Xenos with her pulse rifle. And the lack of gravity means that their acidic blood won't melt straight through the floor. Now the aliens don't even stand a chance, and she's able to take down the entire horde just before she's about to run out of ammo. There's just one problem. Now the chamber is filled with clouds of floating green death, and their only way out is to avoid getting a single drop on them as they head back for the elevator. It's a dangerous trip, and even when they finally get there, they realize that the elevator can't work without gravity. This means that they'll have to Peter Pan their way out of there, but just before she jumps, another alien grabs Rain by the leg, trying to pull her back through the gate. She blasts its hands off with the rifle, but the force sends her tumbling out of control up the shaft, and its acid blood melts through the gate, allowing more of them to get inside. Reaching out for Andy, she tries to grab his hand before the next gravity purge, but she can't do it in time. Suddenly, the girl plummets down as the gravity turns back on, and as she's falling, one of the xenomorphs catches her with its tail. That's when the acid blood finally melts through the floor, causing an explosion that forces the xenomorph to let her go. And seeing his moment, Andy lets the elevator fall, taking out the rest of the swarm on its way down, but it's not over yet. One of the aliens survived, and just when it's about to kill her, Andy drops down from above using the pulse rifle to blast its head off, saving her life once again. They make it to their ship just as the station hits the rings, using the autopilot to get them out only a matter of seconds before they would have been killed. Rook's over there thinking that they'll just play along, but after rushing her injured friend to the cryopod, Rain announces that they're not going back to the colony, and shuts off the screen just as he's destroyed in the explosion, making 4 down with 3 more to go. After hooking Andy up to a charger that should help keep him alive until they reach Yavaga, Rain here is just about to crawl into her cryopod when she notices that something's going wrong with Kay. Looking at her neck, she can see that the girl must have used the injector, and somehow her pregnancy has accelerated to where it looks like she's about to give birth at any second. And that's exactly what happens, but what comes out ain't no stinking baby. Wrapping it in a blanket, Rain takes the egg sac and starts sprinting for the airlock, but the acid blood quickly begins to melt through, and the pod falls down into the cargo container below. Okay, just when they thought they were safe, now we've got an alien baby on the scene. When Rain used a jacket to pick up the egg, she could already tell that the acid blood was burning through. Instead of immediately trying to rush it to the airlock, she could have quickly removed the cryofuel and used it to freeze the egg first. Then she'd be able to safely transport it over to the airlock and send it out into the depths of space where it belongs. Luckily, the thing got caught on some minerals down in the cargo hold, but they only have a limited amount of time before it melts straight through the floor. In space, there's basically no atmospheric pressure, so their ships need to be artificially pressurized. If the acid blood melts through the hull, the pressure difference will cause the air inside the ship to violently rush out into the vacuum. The force is so strong that it could pull objects or even people straight through the opening, which you obviously would not survive. And even if you don't get shot into space, the sudden pressure drop would cause your blood to expand, knocking you unconscious and leading to your death. But the alien egg isn't the only threat. The ship is about to enter manual pilot mode, meaning that they don't have long before they crash into the rings. Rain has her hands full, so they need to split up and deal with each threat one at a time. The first thing they need to do is get the ship under control, and we know that Andy here can fly since he was originally their pilot to Yavaga, so he needs to take over the controls and stay there no matter what, because we won't be able to save anyone if the entire ship gets destroyed. As for Rain, her first instinct is to drop the entire cargo hold, which is actually a great idea, but the electronic systems are locked out because of the damage, meaning that her only choice is to do a manual override. She'll have to go down into the hold either way, so the first thing that she needs to do when she gets there is use the cryo sprayer to freeze the egg, stopping it from melting through. Hopefully she'll get there before the creature emerges, but with how fast they grow, there's a chance it already did. If she encounters the creature down there, then the cryo sprayer is still her best weapon. But instead of just aiming for the creature in general, she should try to direct the spray towards its legs and arms. Freezing its arms and legs, plus its tail, would limit its mobility, one of its most deadly factors. Then you could the creature up and drop the cargo hold manually, getting rid of it for good. As the hull's integrity is compromised, the ship turns back into manual piloting mode, causing them to start falling straight towards the rings. Grabbing a cryo sprayer, Rain makes her way down to the cargo hold, but the creature sneaks away without her noticing. At the same time, Andy wakes up and finds Kay slowly dying from her injuries, only to turn around and see the horrifying xeno-human hybrid crawling towards them. The android tries to stop it, but the creature slashes his throat with one of its claws before turning its attention on the helpless girl. Hearing the commotion, Rain rushes back to find Andy barely clinging to life. And when she enters the next room, she sees the hybrid feasting on her friend's corpse, making 5 down with 2 more to go. The monster turns to face her next, standing over her like some kind of f***ed up Na'vi from Avatar, but she uses a blast from her backpack to hold it off. Annoyed, the creature swats it out of her hand, causing it to fill the entire ship with a cloud of freezing gas. She tries to save Andy, but the temperature is dropping way too fast, and her only choice is to hobble for the airlock, where she's able to use an environmental suit to keep herself alive. Just as she's putting on the helmet, she sees that the alien is already breaking in. But that's when she comes up with a last-second plan. Grabbing onto a winch, she drops down into the cargo hold and starts rushing to unhook the 4 manual safety levers, trying to cut it loose and send it into the planet's rings. The alien follows her in, and there isn't much time as she scrambles to hit each latch. But just before she can get to the last one, the creature pops up behind the girl and knocks her away. With the monster standing over her, Rain realizes that her only hope is to kick the egg sac, causing the acidic blood to melt through the floor. In an instant, they're both violently sucked out into the vacuum of space, leaving her dangling with only seconds left before their ship hits the rings. Fighting for her life, the girl begins pulling herself back up, but just then, the alien grabs onto her suit, holding her in place as it leans in to finish her off. As the glass on her helmet is about to shatter, she desperately pulls on the winch, releasing the final lever and sending the hybrid plummeting down with the container, where they're both blown apart by the impact. Pulling herself in, Rain makes it to safety just as the autopilot kicks back on, saving their ship from being destroyed as well. Setting a course for Yavaga, she loads Andy into a pod to keep him alive, before climbing into one herself, knowing that the next time she'll wake up, she'll finally be able to see the sun. And in the end, that makes 1 hybrid down with 2 survivors. But after seeing everything that's happened, I'm starting to think that life back on the colony might not be so bad after all. Alien Romulus. What a f***ing trip, man. This movie was, not perfect. It definitely committed a lot of sins. I didn't really appreciate the fact that they, threw lines from the previous movie in there, but I understand why they did it, because apparently audiences these days are they're just f***ing stupid. But anyways, I love the movie. Art direction was great. I don't know what to believe anymore, but thank you for watching, and let me know if you guys would have done something different out there. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. I'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.